My name is Avram Friedman. I'm the Executive Director of the Canary Coalition. Thanks for choosing to stick around and hear what I have to say about several climate and energy-related legislative initiatives that my organization, the Canary Coalition, has spearheaded in 2019 in the North Carolina General Assembly. Before I get into the details of these pieces of legislation, I want to first explain the general principles under which the Canary Coalition operates, so you'll have a better understanding of the reasoning behind each of these bills. The Canary Coalition is a true grassroots nonprofit organization that began organizing in 1999 around the issues of poor air quality in Western North Carolina and global climate change. We have tax-exempt status for our public educational and advocacy activities, but we do not accept funds from any source that would compromise the mission or goals or objectives of our activities, such as from grant foundations that are funded by the fossil fuel industry, the nuclear power industry, or the public utility industry, Duke Power in particular. Nor are we funded by any level of government, local, state, or federal. For our financial needs, we rely entirely on individual donations from membership supporters throughout North Carolina and beyond. The Canary Coalition's goal is to mobilize public support for solutions that address the climate crisis at the scale of the problem, based on scientific facts as we transform to a 100% renewable, regenerative, and just economy, including energy efficiency in power production and use at homes, in industry, in transportation, and in agriculture. To achieve this mobilization, Canary Coalition, in conjunction with other like-minded groups and organizations and individuals, engages in the legislative process when appropriate, the regulatory process when that's appropriate, the legal and judicial systems when that is needed, and we've organized and participated in nonviolent civil disobedience, street demonstrations, silent and not so silent extended vigils, and occupations throughout the state when necessary. The Canary Coalition was one of the organizations instrumental in the introduction of the Clean Smokestacks Act in 2001, and its passage intact without compromise to its standards or implementation deadlines against the resistance of Duke Energy and Progress Energy in 2002. This bill mandated a cleanup of antiquated coal-burning power plants that had been grandfathered in under the Federal Clean Air Act of 1970. Can you all hear me all right? Okay. These 14 coal-burning power plants were responsible for more than 60% of the air pollution statewide in North Carolina. As a result of the Clean Smokestacks Act, all these plants are now either closed or fitted with modern emission control systems, and the air quality throughout the state has significantly improved. In 2007, the Canary Coalition was one of the key groups instrumental in community organizing to successfully stop Progress Energy from building a new diesel-fired power plant in Woodfin adjacent to the city of Asheville. Ned mentioned that during the panel discussion. This power plant would have subjected a densely populated area to extremely toxic fumes on a regular basis, but it wasn't needed, and it was the wrong type of solution for this day and age. We argued at public hearings that we should be implementing energy efficiency measures and deploying solar and wind to meet all the energy needs. As a result of a tremendous and powerful public outcry we helped generate, along with Mountain Voices Alliance and others, the Woodfin Zoning Board turned down the permit and the power plant was never built. In 2009, the Canary Coalition was one of the groups instrumental in organizing nonviolent civil disobedience at Duke Energy headquarters in Charlotte, North Carolina, to stop the construction of the mammoth-sized Cliffside coal-burning power plant in Rutherford County. Although we haven't yet succeeded in shutting down Cliffside, we can say with a fair amount of certainty that there will never again be another coal-burning power plant built in North Carolina. Now, the battle has moved to stopping the construction of so-called natural gas power plants, pipelines, and infrastructure, including the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the Mountain Valley Pipeline, and the dozens of new gas-fired plants Duke Energy has proposed after vertically integrating and buying Piedmont Natural Gas. In 2011, members of the Canary Coalition were in Washington, D.C., participating in civil disobedience at the White House to stop mountaintop removal coal mining and to stop the Keystone XL pipeline. In 2016, we were at Standing Rock with brothers and sisters who were trying to protect indigenous rights, the waters of the Missouri River, and the climate from the invasive Dakota Access Pipeline. In addition to these and many other actions in which we've been involved, the Canary Coalition has initiated an online television station, Mountain Stream TV, that live streams, video records, and archives grassroots activities in western North Carolina that are usually ignored or underreported by the corporate mainstream news media. We have learned the importance of being independent and the ability to share information and broadcast our work and the important work of other grassroots efforts throughout the region. I tell you this history so you'll understand where we are coming from as an organization and as part of a much greater movement. We are nonviolent guerrilla fighters, regardless of what the theater may be it legislative, regulatory, legal, judicial, or out in the streets. And our tactics have led to some significant successes. When we introduce a piece of legislation in the North Carolina General Assembly, actually getting it passed is only one of our purposes. The effort can be successful in many ways, regardless of whether or not the bill passes in the session in which it is first introduced. It is no small feat and a success in itself just getting a bill introduced and signed onto by one or more elected state legislators. Once a bill is introduced, the issue it addresses gains an elevated status in the public discourse. It becomes newsworthy. It serves as a vehicle for public involvement. There are those in the environmental community who introduce climate or energy-related legislation that is pre-compromised, with the notion that we have to bow to so-called political realities and accept incremental progress. But the Canary Coalition rejects this approach out of hand. From our perspective, it's far too late for an incremental approach to the climate crisis. Offering inadequate solutions does not convey the urgency of the crisis and feeds into the narrative that we need bridge fuels and investment in more fossil fuel infrastructure instead of a rapid transition to an era defined by renewable energy resources, sustainable technologies, and a more just, decentralized energy economy. So the legislative solutions we offer are stark, hard, and sound proposals that reflect the scientific realities, not the perceived political realities of the moment. Political landscapes can and must change because the scientific realities of the climate crisis will not change. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, an association of the most credible, experienced, and respected climatologists in the world, after decades of intense research using data derived from the most advanced, sophisticated equipment and techniques known to science, including satellite data studies, oceanographic monitoring studies, and ice core studies, has determined that we have about 1 decade to completely transform the way we live, eliminate the extraction and burning of fossil fuels, replace them with energy efficiency and energy derived from solar, wind, geothermal energy, ocean waves, and tides, or our biosphere will suffer irreversible damage that could render the planet virtually uninhabitable by human beings and many other animal and plant species in the decades to follow. Some of the manifestations of the changes to our climate include sea level rise, causing mass migration and unimaginable waves of refugees from coastal areas, inland, and in many cases across borders, stressing international relationships, causing conflict and war, the acidification of our oceans, threatening the extinction of thousands of species of aquatic wildlife and threatening a major source of food for the world's human population, intense deadly heat waves, drought and wildfires in some areas, intense storms and flooding in other areas, the migration north of tropical insects and diseases, the loss of habitat to birds, animals, and plants, the total disruption of complex ecosystems throughout the planet. So, when the Canary Coalition offers legislation to address climate change, it reflects the reality and the urgency of the climate crisis. There are plenty of people advocating for a renewable energy transformation as we fight to keep fossil fuels in the ground. That's good and necessary. But there aren't enough people providing concrete ideas outlining a plan of how to get there. Economics is the key, because right now our energy economic system is completely geared toward promoting a growth in energy consumption and perpetuating a highly centralized energy system based on the extraction and burning of fossil fuels and the irrational use of wasteful, catastrophically unsafe, and uneconomical nuclear energy. Therefore, isn't it an extremely important part of the solution to create a plan that will reverse the economic foundation of the current energy system, replacing it with a system that economically rewards investment in efficiency and decentralized, distributed renewable resources and technologies while penalizing wasteful energy use? In 2011, the Canary Coalition first initiated its lobbying campaign to create the Efficient and Affordable Energy Rates Bill. We found 12 representatives in the North Carolina House willing to co-sponsor and introduce the legislation, and we found 2 senators to do the same in the state Senate, for a total of 14 elected state officials who were willing to defy the power of Duke Energy and sign on to this very progressive, even radical in the view of many, pieces of legislation. In 2019, even though many of the original sponsors are no longer state legislators defeated by gerrymandered elections, retired or deceased, we now have 20 co-sponsors, 10 in each house. The 2019 Efficient and Affordable Energy Rates Bill is House Bill 513 and Senate Bill 338. If you want to, write those numbers down. They're important. House Bill 513 and Senate Bill 338, the Efficient and Affordable Energy Rates Bill. H513 S338 has 3 basic provisions to understand. First, the bill mandates the North Carolina Utilities Commission design and implement a system of inverted tiered block rate structures for residential, commercial, and industrial electric ratepayers. An inverted tiered block rate system increases the cost of energy incrementally as more energy is consumed during the course of a monthly billing cycle. The first tiered block of energy use a month has the lowest price per kilowatt. Once that threshold is exceeded, the user enters the second tiered block, and every kilowatt hour consumed after that comes at a higher cost. Depending on how the Utilities Commission designs the system, there will be 2, 3, or more levels of tiered rate blocks. There will be separate rate structures designed for the residential, commercial, and industrial sectors. The dynamics of this energy economic system are obviously designed to drive electrical consumers to become more conscious of their energy use and to invest heavily in energy efficiency and rooftop solar energy systems to avoid paying the costs associated with the upper tiered rate blocks. The further mandate for the Utilities Commission in this provision is that it must design the system with steep enough economic incentive to result in an overall statewide reduction in energy consumption of 50% over the next 10 years. This steep reduction in energy consumption will much more easily enable a 100% transition to a decentralized renewable electric grid, including mass storage. But even though an investment in efficiency always pays for itself in the long run, how can homeowners, businesses, and industries afford the upfront cost? Where will the money come from to make the initial investment? The second provision of H513 S338 is the creation of an energy efficiency bank in North Carolina with the sole purpose of issuing low-interest financing to ratepayers for energy efficiency and rooftop solar projects. The loans are administered through the utility bill and are paid off with each monthly utility payment. Because in almost all cases, the energy saved from efficiency projects exceeds in value the monthly loan payment, the consumer will save money from day one after making the efficiency improvements. In other words, there's no upfront costs, basically. You're paying the loan off as you pay your monthly utility bill, and you'll be saving more energy per month than the amount you have to pay towards servicing the loan. Of course, once the loan's paid off completely, energy bills will drop precipitously. The third provision of H513 S338 is the creation of a 5% avoidable pollution fee for the purchase of any non-Energy Star related electrical appliance, such as an incandescent light bulb, an inefficient dishwasher, or washing machine. The money collected from this fee will be recycled into the Energy Efficiency Bank to finance more loans for efficiency projects around the state. A residual effect of the provisions of H513 S338 will be the creation of thousands of new businesses and industries providing living wage jobs throughout North Carolina in the fields of energy auditing, energy efficiency, solar installation and maintenance, and all the spin-offs that provide for the needs of those industries, such as landscaping, accounting, engineering, carpentry, plumbing, and roofing. Okay. The Efficient and Affordable Energy Rates Bill outlines a very specific set of actions that will change the economics of electrical production and use in North Carolina. On the other hand, the North Carolina Green New Deal, House Bill 737, please write that down, also initiated by the Canary Coalition and its allies this year in the North Carolina General Assembly, targets all energy sectors, including electrical, transportation, heat and cooling, and agricultural use, but without specific mechanisms outlined for achieving the stated goal of a 100% transition to renewables within the next 10 years. Modeled directly after the federal Green New Deal legislation introduced by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and co-sponsored by more than 100 members of Congress, the North Carolina bill is a statement of principles and goals coupled with the appointment of a high-powered committee charged with the task of developing specific comprehensive plans for achieving these goals within the time limitations outlined by the worldwide scientific community. This bill has 17 sponsors in the House and co-sponsors. We actually had 10 North Carolina senators lined up to introduce the identical legislation in the Senate, but due to a dirty trick by an unscrupulous lawmaker, the bill was not filed on time to beat the deadline in April. Nonetheless, getting the House bill filed was a significant achievement, making North Carolina the third state after New York and Minnesota to introduce the Green New Deal in solidarity with the federal legislation and in solidarity with the movement that is building toward this dynamic and comprehensive approach to addressing climate change. The Green New Deal movement has galvanized public opinion nationwide. It has stimulated the news media and many new lawmakers into action like never before. The youth-led Sunrise movement is powerful and growing stronger every day, along with groups like 350.org. Presidential candidates like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Tulsi Gabbard are stumping along the campaign trail, broadcasting the goals of the Green New Deal. We have momentum right now, and the mere presence of House Bill 737 in the southern state of North Carolina, whether it passes in this legislative session or not, is contributing to this national momentum. The third piece of legislation we've initiated in the North Carolina General Assembly holds the key to passing all other progressive measures in our state and in the entire country. The We the People Act, House Bill 512 and Senate Bill 339. Please write that down. House Bill 512 and Senate Bill 339 would allow the people of North Carolina to vote to make North Carolina the 20th state in the Union, to petition the U.S. Congress to pass a constitutional amendment declaring that corporations are not people and money is not speech. This constitutional amendment would reverse the basis of the Supreme Court's 2010 decision on Citizens United versus the Federal Elections Commission that opened the floodgates to unlimited dark money in politics, allowing corporations to buy elections while making a mockery of the democratic process in America. This system of legalized bribery has allowed Duke Energy, the fossil fuel industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the war industry, and the investment banking industry to run roughshod over public health and the environment with no accountability. As long as big money is allowed to control our political system with unlimited campaign contribution, it is unlikely we'll be able to make significant progress to address the climate crisis or any other progressive social, environmental, or economic issue. While it was a major achievement getting all three of these bills introduced in the 2019 North Carolina General Assembly, their effectiveness as tools for change depends upon people using them by contacting North Carolina state legislators and the governor's office, writing letters to the editor, and talking to your friends and neighbors to voice your support. The more elected officials hear about them, the more seriously they will take these issues. Democracy really does work like that. Whenever the people get together and a movement arises, we win. The people ultimately are more powerful than the money of corporate interests. We've proven that when the Clean Smokestacks Act passed in 2002 against the power and influence of Duke Energy and Progress Energy. We proved that when we forced the state government of North Carolina to abandon the idea of hosting the Southeast Low-Level Radioactive Waste Compact in 1994. We proved it when we defeated the nuclear industry in 1986, when they wanted to locate the East Coast high-level nuclear waste repository in the Sandy Mush community right here in western North Carolina at the juncture of Bunker, Madison, and Haywood County. And we said no, loudly and clearly. There are many other examples throughout American history of grassroots movements overwhelming the power of money in politics, such as the movement to abolish slavery, the movement to give women the right to vote, and the movement to allow working people to organize into labor unions to achieve economic gains like decent wages, a 40-hour work week, and weekends. So let's continue to build our movement, to rise and to save the future for our children and grandchildren from the worst consequences of climate change. Thank you for listening to me, and we have more information on this legislation at the Canary Coalition booth, which is about halfway down this row of organizations, and I'll be glad to engage in discussion with any of you. Thank you.